Lady Seraphine had never imagined that the night she became a bride would feel so strange. The castle of Lord Caelan rose on jagged cliffs, its black stones catching the silver light of the full moon. Waves crashed against the rocks below, sending sprays of salt into the air, and the wind howled through the towers like a warning. She had come dressed in silk and lace, her heart full of hope and dreams of love. But something in the air felt heavy, like shadows had already taken root. Her carriage rolled over the cobblestones, echoing through the empty courtyard. Torches flickered, casting long, trembling shadows against the walls. Seraphine's fingers tightened on the edge of her cloak. She had never seen Lord Caelan in person. Her father had arranged the marriage to secure an alliance between their lands. She had been told that he was kind, handsome, and fair, but nothing prepared her for the eerie perfection of the castle, or the feeling that she was stepping into a story written by someone else, a story not entirely hers. When the great doors opened, she was greeted by the soft murmurs of servants and the gleam of polished floors. The halls were adorned with tapestries that told stories of kings and queens, battles won and curses broken. She felt a chill as her eyes moved across the images. Some figures seemed to watch her with hollow eyes, their faces twisted in pain or anger. The feeling of being observed stayed with her, even as she was led to her bridal chamber. The chamber itself was magnificent. Tall windows framed the moon, and the room glowed with the light of dozens of candles. The bed was draped in white silk, and roses lay scattered across the sheets. Seraphine stepped inside, her heels clicking softly against the stone floor. She tried to steady her breathing, telling herself it was normal to feel nervous. After all, it was her wedding night. And then he came. Lord Caelan, or the man who claimed to be him, entered the room. His presence was commanding yet gentle. His face was perfect, exactly as she had imagined from the descriptions, and yet, the moment their eyes met, Seraphine felt a strange flicker of recognition. It was not just him she saw. It was someone else, someone familiar from a memory she could not place. He knelt and took her hand, his touch warm against her cold fingers. "Seraphine," he said softly, his voice smooth like velvet. "Tonight is ours. I hope you will forgive me if I seem awkward." Seraphine forced a smile, but her heart skipped a beat. There was something odd in his eyes, a shadow that did not belong to Caelan. It was not fear nor anger. It was something harder to define, a secret he carried like a weight. As the evening passed, she noticed the mark on his wrist. It was faint under the candlelight, a small symbol etched into the skin. Her stomach tightened. That mark, she had only seen it once before, long ago, on a man who had been her friend, someone she had trusted completely. That man was supposed to be gone. She had believed he had disappeared forever, leaving only stories and whispers behind. "Caelan," she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "This mark, where did it come from?" He looked at her with a flicker of unease, then smiled. A practiced, charming smile. A family crest. A tradition. Nothing more, but Seraphine did not believe him. Her instinct screamed that something was wrong, that the man before her was not entirely who he seemed. She tried to push the thought aside, telling herself she was being foolish. Perhaps it was just nerves, the weight of the wedding, the strangeness of being alone in a vast castle. Later, as they walked through the corridors of the castle, Seraphine noticed the whispers of the servants. Eyes followed them, and doors opened just enough to reveal shadowed figures before closing again. There were rumors, snippets of conversations she could barely hear. The brother vanished. Forbidden magic. Her heart pounded. What had she walked into? In the quiet of the moonlit gardens, she confronted him. "Who are you really?" she demanded, her voice trembling yet firm. "I feel as though I know you, but I also know I do not." He stopped and looked at her, his expression unreadable. The wind tugged at his hair and shadows danced across his face. "I am who I have to be," he said quietly. "Tonight I am Caelan. But there are truths that are dangerous to speak aloud. You would not understand." Seraphine felt anger flare mingled with fear. "I am not a child. I have trusted you and I deserve the truth." He sighed, a sound of regret and weariness. He stepped closer, lowering his gaze. "I stole something precious. I took a face, a life, not knowing if I could survive what came next. And yet when I met you, I could not turn back. I did not know if I could love you, but I did. That is my curse and my gift." Her heart ached, torn between disbelief and the strange pull she felt toward him. He spoke of sins and mistakes, of a past filled with shadows and loss. And yet in his eyes she saw a flicker of something genuine, a hint of the man beneath the mask. The wind carried a cry from the cliffs, and the candles flickered violently. The castle seemed alive, aware of their tension. Seraphine's mind raced. Could she trust him? Could she forgive the lies that had begun even before they had touched hands as husband and wife? That night she could not sleep. She watched him as he stood by the window, looking out at the stormy sea. Moonlight traced the contours of his face, and she noticed the subtle changes, small, almost imperceptible shifts in expression that made her question everything she had been told. Her heart beat faster with fear and longing alike, and then she saw it. A shadow moved across his reflection in the glass, a flicker of someone else's face. Her breath caught. He was changing. His features for a moment were not Kalen's. A cold shiver ran down her spine. She realized with horror that the man she had married carried a secret so dark it could undo everything she had believed about love, trust, and loyalty. Before she could speak, he turned as if sensing her discovery. His eyes softened, almost pleading. "I am yours tonight, Seraphine," he whispered. "Whatever the truth may be, this moment is real. I am here with you." Her fingers shook as she reached for his hand. Conflicting emotions warred within her. Anger, fear, attraction, and a strange, undeniable hope. Could someone who had committed such a betrayal still be capable of love? Could she forgive a heart hidden behind stolen features? The night stretched on, long and tense, filled with the quiet sound of the wind, the distant crash of waves, and the pulse of hearts trying to trust in the impossible. Seraphine finally closed her eyes, unsure whether she was resting or merely waiting for the next revelation. And then, a whisper in the dark, soft and intimate, reached her ears. "You were meant for him, yet you chose me." Seraphine froze, her breath catching in her throat. The candlelight flickered as if the room itself were holding its breath. The words were not spoken aloud, yet they carried weight. A promise, a threat, and a confession all at once. She did not know whether to fear them or listen, whether to run or stay. The castle seemed to lean closer, the walls echoing with secrets and shadows. Outside, the storm raged, as though the night itself had conspired to reveal the truth. Seraphine understood with a sinking heart that her life had changed forever. The man who claimed Kalen's face was not entirely Kalen, but he had captured something far more dangerous: her heart. And in the quiet that followed, as the wind howled through the towers, she realized that the true journey, the one of truth, danger, and forbidden connection, was only just beginning. The storm had not ceased when dawn broke over the cliffs. Rain lashed against the castle windows, and the sea roared with anger, as if the world itself mourned and judged the secret that Lady Seraphine had discovered the night before. She could not eat, could not sleep, and could not silence the questions that clawed at her mind. Who was the man she had married? Was he a monster or merely a victim of forces beyond his control? And yet, despite the fear and betrayal, she felt a strange pull toward him, a connection she could not explain, a magnet of heart and soul that defied reason. He found her in the garden, standing beneath a stone arch where the roses had wilted under the storm. His hair was damp, and his clothes clung to his body. For a moment, he said nothing. His eyes, those eyes that were both Kalen's and not, held a depth she could not pierce. "Seraphine," he said finally, his voice low and cautious. "I owe you the truth. Not excuses, not lies. Only the truth." Her heart pounded. "Then speak. I can bear it. I must know." He drew a deep breath. "I am not Kalen. His brother. My brother vanished long ago, and I took his face. I thought it was the only way to claim the life I believed was mine. But when I saw you, I did not expect to love you. I did not expect to care. And now I cannot undo what I have done without losing you entirely." Seraphine's hand trembled as she reached out. "Why? Why would you do this? Why steal someone else's life, their face, and their name?" "I was desperate," he admitted, his voice barely above the wind. "I was bound by magic, by fear, by a need I could not control. And yet, I did not expect your heart to see past the mask. That is what terrifies me the most, that you might forgive me and in forgiving give me a chance to be better." Tears stung Seraphine's eyes. Anger and fear battled with compassion and longing. She had been betrayed, yes, but she also sensed his sorrow, his regret, and the weight of the wrongs he carried. Perhaps love could exist even where lies had taken root. The castle bell tolled in the distance, deep and solemn, reminding them both that time did not wait. Shadows stretched across the garden, and the wind whispered secrets in their ears. Seraphine stepped closer, her hand brushing his. "Can the curse be undone?" she asked softly. He looked away, towards the cliffs where the waves smashed with relentless fury. "Yes, but it is not simple. The magic that changed me is old and powerful. To undo it, a sacrifice must be made. One of us may be lost, or the spell may claim both our lives if we fail." Seraphine felt the weight of the decision settle over her like a heavy cloak, and yet despite fear, she knew what she must do. "I will help you," she said, voice trembling but firm. "If love is real, we must risk it. If trust is possible, we must prove it." He stared at her, awe and disbelief mingling with gratitude. "Are you certain?" "I am," she said. "I will not let fear guide my heart." The ritual was held in the grand hall where moonlight spilled through broken windows, casting silver light over the black marble floor. Ancient symbols were carved into the stone, and candles lined the walls, flickering as if alive. A hush fell over the room, the silence only broken by the wind howling through the shattered windows. The man who had stolen his brother's face knelt at the center, and Seraphine followed, placing her hands over his. He shivered at her touch, as if the warmth of her courage was a flame against the cold magic that clung to him. "Repeat after me," the old mage instructed, his voice echoing in the empty hall. "Speak the words of truth. Speak your names, your sins, your desires. Let the magic know who you are and what you wish to become." The words were strange, twisting on their tongues like silver ribbons of wind. Seraphine felt a surge of power in her chest, a force that connected her heart to his, binding their fates. He spoke of the theft, of the pain he caused, and of the love he had found despite the lies. She spoke of forgiveness, courage, and the hope that love could heal even the deepest wounds. The air grew thick with energy. The candles flickered wildly, shadows danced on the walls, and the storm outside seemed to answer them. The man's face trembled, shifting subtly as the magic tested his true self. For a moment he cried out, as if the spell was tearing him apart. Seraphine held his hands tighter, whispering words of comfort, urging him to trust her, to trust their bond. And then, it happened. The glow of magic enveloped him, and his features softened, the traces of his brother's face melting away. The man who remained was not Kalen, not his brother, but someone new, scarred by mistakes, humbled by guilt, yet radiant with the potential for love. Seraphine looked at him, her heart swelling with relief and awe. "You are you," she said softly, tears streaming down her face. "Finally, just you." He reached for her, cupping her face gently. "And you have seen me and still chosen me. That is more than I could have hoped for." Their lips met in a tender, cautious kiss, sealing the bond that had begun in shadows and deception, but was now grounded in truth. Outside, the storm began to calm, as if the world itself recognized the breaking of the curse and the triumph of courage and love. But even as relief washed over them, a faint whisper echoed through the hall. The magic that had been broken was old and restless, and though the ritual had succeeded, the castle seemed alive with watchful eyes. Seraphine felt a shiver pass through her spine. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. He nodded, tightening his hold on her hands. "Yes, it is a reminder that the world we live in is never truly quiet. There are still forces that watch, still powers that linger." They left the grand hall hand in hand, stepping into the corridors that now seemed less oppressive, more alive with the promise of their shared future. The castle, though still shadowed and storm-tossed, no longer felt like a prison. It was a place of transformation, a witness to their courage and the choices that had led them to each other. Days passed, and the kingdom slowly came to know the truth. The people murmured about the bride and her husband, about the mysterious disappearance of Kalen's brother, and the brave act of love and forgiveness that had healed a curse. Seraphine walked through the halls with a newfound strength, her gaze steady, her heart unburdened by fear. She had chosen truth, faced darkness, and found love in the unlikeliest of places. The man who had stolen his brother's face now stood beside her, not as an impostor, but as a man who had been redeemed. His eyes, once shadowed with guilt, now shone with admiration and devotion. He never stopped seeking her trust, never ceased proving that love could exist even where deceit had sown fear. At night, when the moon rose high and the castle was quiet, they would sit together by the window, listening to the waves crash and the wind sigh through the towers. Sometimes he would glance at her, a shadow of the past flickering across his features, and she would smile, placing her hand over his. "We have chosen each other," she would whisper. "That is enough." And in that choice they found freedom. Freedom from lies, freedom from fear, and freedom to love. They were no longer defined by stolen faces or hidden truths. They were defined by courage, by the willingness to forgive, and by the deep, undeniable bond that had formed between them in the storm. Yet even in their happiness, the castle held a quiet secret. In the darkest corner of the highest tower, the remnants of the old magic stirred, as if waiting for the day it might rise again. But Seraphine and her husband did not fear it. They had faced shadows and survived. They had chosen truth, and in doing so, had created a love stronger than any curse. For the first time, Seraphine believed in a future not written by others, a future that belonged to her and to the man she had chosen. Not the face he wore, but the heart he had revealed. And as they held each other, watching the dawn break, over the cliffs, she knew that whatever trials came, they would face them together, bound by trust, courage, and love. Cliffhanger, closing hook. As the first rays of sunlight touched the castle towers, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper carried through the halls. "The face may change, but destiny always watches." Seraphine shivered, not with fear, but with the knowledge that their story, though redeemed, was only the beginning. Somewhere in the shadows, magic lingered, waiting. And the heart she had chosen to trust would be the one to face whatever came next.